And welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I thought I'd introduce a new section to the channel. I'm not sure what I'll end up calling this. Middle-aged people watching anime? Something like that. Because I wanted to talk about anime. I know it's got a big following, and I was introduced to it way back in the 70s with this show, Battle of the Planets. I have great memories of this series as a kid. And I know it's got a big following nowadays, anime in general. So I just thought, well, this is the show that I started on. I want to talk about it. Does it still stand up to what I remember? Are my memories of it as a kid colored by, now that I'm a middle-aged fella, does it still make sense or that kind of thing? And also to watch other anime, old and new. I want to see what it is that, how has anime evolved? What is it that the current anime market is all about? What do people who are really into anime these days, what do they like? Do I like it? That kind of thing. So, let's talk a little bit about Battle of the Planets, the show that started me off on it. Came out in the 70s, and it came out in the West from the Sandy Frank Entertainment Company. They had obviously seen that Star Wars was a big success, and they wanted to bring something like that out for the Saturday morning cartoon crowd. So they brought out Battle of the Planets. They took a Japanese cartoon called Science Ninja Team Gatchaman and modified it and imported it, brought it to Saturday morning cartoon crowd. Now Gatchaman is a very different show. You'll notice they've got a G on their belt. That stands for Gatchaman. In Battle of the Planets, they ended up just calling it G-Force and worked with that. Gatchaman was a very different show, though. It was futuristic and kind of violent and had dark elements to it. I mean, like a lot of animation from Japan, it wasn't catering to 10-year-old kids. It was more adult in nature, what the storylines were. When the Sandy Frank Corporation, or Entertainment Company, brought it to the West, they cleaned it up a lot. They got rid of a lot of the violence, or they cut away before a lot of explosions. They set it in space more so than Gatchaman. A lot of the planets they go to in the Battle of the Planets series look a lot like Earth, because the Gatchaman cartoon was on Earth. It wasn't in space. But I think the people who were producing it in the West or modifying it felt that if they sold it as a bunch of different planets that were being journeyed to, they could get away with some of the strange tones, similar to the way Star Trek used to back in the 60s, get away with a lot of social commentary because it was set in space and so it wouldn't be as scrutinized. So there were other little modifications they would make as well. They would establish with the narration that, oh, the entire city has been evacuated before the battle would take place, or all of these fighters that are flying in are all robot controlled, to kind of emphasize nobody's actually in any danger here. Also, they would stick bumpers at the beginning and end of the episode with 7 Zark 7, this cartoon robot, obviously a cross between C-3PO and R2-D2. He had the kind of look of R2-D2, but he spoke in English like C-3PO and had a very friendly kind of a tone to him, something that a little 10-year-old kid could easily attach himself to and identify with and enjoy. So that was an interesting change, but it'll be very curious. How does Battle of the Planets view now? What is it like? Is it watchable? Is it enjoyable like it was for me as a kid? And at some point in this series of watching anime, I am going to find the original Gatchaman episodes and watch those and compare what is the tone of those like compared to Battle of the Planets. So, yeah, so that's basically it. There will be a few episodes like this, but we're going to start off with the very first episode of Battle of the Planets, and I'm going to see just how well does it hold up today. I never understood with these transmutations they do. It's not like the Transformers did later on, like Optimus Prime and stuff. They were just suddenly magically the new vehicle without any kind of changing or anything. Oh, that's interesting. They actually mentioned there that they've got some kind of an implant that gives them secret and mysterious powers. Maybe that's how they transform without the vehicles actually converting at all. And the obligatory Seven Zark 7 saying, I hope those kids are going to be okay. That's a Western thing. That wasn't in Gatchaman, I'm sure. That's a great shot. And Seven Zark 7's just explaining they all had concussions. They didn't suffer at all any kind of pain. That was very nice. Our first time seeing Zoltar. And the luminous one. Okay, so since they're trapped, they have to use the Fiery Phoenix, which is something that was be used in future episodes. And there is the Fiery Phoenix. So even that was established in the very first episode as something we can use when we need to. And according to Seven Zark 7, that's the end. They just got away by turning into the Phoenix. Okay, so having now watched the first episode of Battle of the Planets, decided to turn the lights on. It was starting to get a little dark outside. And my wife is holding the camera.
Hello!
So we're going to do some sort of questions and answers and see what we think of the show. It's surprising to me how well it holds up. Like, it is still something that you could launch today. I mean, some bits of it are kind of cheesy with the bird outfits and stuff, but... and oh my god, Keop is so annoying, but whatever, that's another issue entirely. What did you think, Dee?
You know, I mean, back in the day, yes, I did watch Battle of the Planets. Totally loved it. But going back, you're right. Certain parts are really cheesy. The villains are really not that menacing. You know, if we were to have gotten the Japanese version, in which would it have held up a lot better?
Possible. More aware watching it now of, oh, here's a bit that they stuck in to clean it up for the kids. And here's a line of dialogue that they threw in to make it so that it didn't seem like so many bad things were happening. Like when Mark is throwing his little boomerang thing and knocking out the bad guys. It's like, okay, you can kind of tell there's some cleaning up going on in there.
True, but I honestly think that kids nowadays, and even back then, I don't think it would really have affected us. Because, let's face it, they love explosions.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I wonder if it was more to sell it to the parents. Maybe that's the proper, like, maybe
possibly.
That's where the real problem came from.
Yeah, that could be a possibility. You know, I also think about, you know, us, you know, when we were little, you know, watching Godzilla and seeing tearing down buildings and, you know, people, you know, running and screaming. You know, that wasn't a problem back then.
I watched Godzilla at maybe 10 or 12 years old. Like, I could instantly get there's that Godzilla vibe when the big robotic terrapin comes out. So, yeah, it's like, I can see why maybe to make it something palatable for producers, the Sandy Frank Company, I guess they decided to clean out a lot of the more violent elements. But I think as kids, we were probably quite equipped to handle it back then.
In fact, I think, you know, nowadays, especially with Disney, you have that sort of sanitized Disney ending where, you know, in the past, you know, Snow White died. Scary elements to Disney movies. It's not that way, you know, these days.
That's true, yeah.
So one thing that really bothered me And I don't remember it bothering me as a kid, is Seven Zark 7. Oh my God. I cannot stand him.
Yeah. He's the voice for the audience, but really spoon feeds it to you. Again, I mean, maybe kids in the 70s weren't as adept at picking up subtle plot lines or something, but holy heck, man, you really are spelling out exactly every single little thing and then not being quiet. Like the comments about like, oh, I hope those kids are going to be okay. It's like, can you stop being the overbearing parent in this story? Ugh.
All right. The big question I have to ask you.
All right.
Is Zoltar male or female?
Having done my research, Zoltar in Battle of the Planets is a dude because they mention him a lot. And in one of the first season episodes, Galaxy Girls, I think it's called, Zoltar's sister is met and leads the team to something. And having researched since, I can't remember what the Gatchaman villain is called. Something like Batsay something. Anyway, that character is a hermaphrodite, so a combination, and I don't really know if, again, we'll find out when we watch Gatchaman proper. But I get the impression it was this otherworldly character that could be both simultaneously, and I don't know why they would choose that for a villain in an anime, but why not? There's a lot of interesting things that we're going to encounter as we watch anime, and we're going to be scratching our head like, why would they do that? And that's probably Zoltar or Batsay, whatever the name of the character is in this one, is kind of our first introduction to characters who are unusual or uncommon or a little fringe.
Well, when I was younger in that, I kind of always thought that Zoltar was female, and
He's got the lipstick on.
yeah, I got the lipstick, and also the long flowing locks. I always kind of hoped that he or she was actually female because it's nice to have a badass chick.
Sure.
How often do you get, a good badass villain chick?
Sure. In fact, it is quite surprising for its time that this came out that they had Princess or Jin the Swan, a second or third main character. I mean, it's sort of debatable. Is Mark, Jason, Ken, can't remember Condor's first name. There's the two main leads inside the airplane, or the Phoenix. But it's interesting that they've got the woman character right up there on the missions with the men for that time. And you got to remember, Star Trek had only just happened a few years before, so this idea of including women in on the adventures was kind of an unusual thing. I saw an interview with, in the original Battlestar Galactica, the actresses on that show would get a little annoyed that sometimes their characters wouldn't be going down on the missions on the planets, and it's like, well, that's doesn't make any sense. They're part of the team. So hats off to the Gatchaman people for putting together characters like Jun the Swan as part of that mission. And yeah, if it was your interpretation that Zoltar originally in Battle of the Planets, sorry, getting confused, was a woman, then why not? I don't think Zoltar. I only say they refer to Zoltar as a guy because I think the English-speaking actors would say him and he a lot, but it's obviously never revealed actually in the cartoon.
All right, now that we've watched the first episode, would you be interested in watching the entire series? Or is the first episode, good enough, just, stroll down memory lane?
Well, I would love to have the time to watch all of the shows, all of the seasons and stuff like that. And obviously I've got the DVD set of Battle of the Planets, so I'd love to. But I think because we want to investigate other anime, we want to do things like the Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Sailor Moon, and all those other kind of very, very classic anime. We're just not going to have the time to go through each individual episode. No doubt some of the stuff we watch will compel us to, hey, let's go back and watch more of X, and let's see more of Y, let's see more of Z. So for the immediate period, for whatever we're going to end up calling this show, I guess what, like old farts watching anime?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Okay, old farts watching anime. Right now we'll just be watching the first episode of each and go from there.
All right.
Okay, well, in that case, I guess I'll just sign it off with, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.
See you down the rabbit hole.